Elvis Presley thought a handshake would be enough. But on January 21, 1974, inside the Louisville Coliseum, he handed Muhammad Ali a red velvet box in front of 15,000 people. What was inside made the world's strongest man cry. That single moment didn't just shock the crowd. It redefined what strength looked like when kindness threw the punch. Louisville had never glowed like that night. Spotlights raked across the winter sky, carving halos over the Coliseum where two of the most famous names on earth were about to meet. Inside, more than 15,000 fans packed the arena. The smell of popcorn and liniment oil mixed with the metallic tang of sweat and anticipation. Every seat vibrated beneath the drums of the crowd, chanting a single name, Ali, Ali, until it shook the rafters. Backstage, Elvis Presley adjusted the collar of his white jumpsuit, gold fringe catching the fluorescent light. He wasn't scheduled to perform. He was there to watch. But word had spread. The King of Rock wanted to meet the King of the Ring. Ali was warming up nearby, gloved fists slicing the air in slow, practiced arcs. His trainer, Angelo Dundee, kept count under his breath. 10 seconds between rounds. Champ. Then the door opened. Elvis walked in, calm but unmistakable. The chatter died instantly. Even Ali stopped shadowboxing. "Brother Ali," Elvis said, extending a hand, "you've been knocking down giants. I figured I'd come shake one." Ali's smile stretched wide. "King Elvis himself?" He laughed. "I ought to bow." Elvis shook his head. "Don't you dare. I'm the fan here." Flashbulbs exploded as photographers flooded the hallway. The air pulsed with camera clicks. For a moment, time seemed to hold its breath. Two men from different kingdoms, music and boxing, standing inches apart, both larger than their myths. They moved toward the ring as the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the champ Muhammad Ali, and his special guest, the one and only Elvis Presley." The crowd erupted. People screamed, whistled, waved flags, fainted. Elvis waved back with a grin, while Ali lifted his gloves to the ceiling. Under the ring lights, the difference between them blurred. One fought with rhythm, the other sang with it. Both ruled their worlds through motion and timing. Elvis leaned over the ropes. "How does it feel when the whole planet watches you breathe?" Ali chuckled. "Heavy and beautiful, like a crown you can't set down." The band struck a quick fanfare. The bell clanged. The crowd's roar swelled again. No one in that Coliseum knew that something far bigger than celebrity would happen before the night was over. They came to see a fight. They would leave having witnessed grace. And in the center of that ring, beneath the glare of 15,000 souls, Elvis reached into his jacket pocket, where a small red velvet box waited. The main event was supposed to start in 10 minutes. The crowd still roared. The lights still burned white-hot. But something unexpected was already unfolding ringside. Elvis stood near Ali's corner, flanked by two security guards who didn't quite know what to do with him. He had no reason to be in the ring. He wasn't a promoter, a trainer, or a fighter. He was just a fan with a purpose. In his hands, he held a small red velvet box, tucked under one arm like it carried the weight of a world he didn't want to drop. Ali glanced over between rounds, catching the glint of it. He raised an eyebrow, grinning. "What's that, King? You gonna crown me?" Elvis smiled back, but didn't answer. He stepped closer, stopping just outside the ropes. The cameras noticed. The crowd murmured. This wasn't part of any program. Ali leaned on the ropes, still breathing hard from sparring. "If that's jewelry, I'll need a new ring to show it off." Elvis chuckled. "Something like that." He motioned to a stagehand, who set up a small microphone near the ring apron. The sound crackled through the speakers. The noise of the crowd dulled into curiosity. Elvis spoke softly, but the entire Coliseum fell silent. "I came here tonight to meet a man who showed the world that courage can be graceful. Mr. Ali, this is from one king to another." He lifted the box with both hands and passed it through the ropes. The cameras zoomed in as Ali reached out, one gloved hand, trembling slightly under the stadium light. The red velvet shimmered in the glare like it was alive. The crowd gasped. Photographers rushed forward. Even Angelo Dundee whispered, "This isn't planned." Ali turned the box in his hands. It was heavier than it looked. He stared at Elvis, then at the audience, unsure what to do next. "Open it," Elvis said quietly. The arena held its breath. Ali slowly pulled the lid back with one gloved finger. A flash of gold caught the light. Inside lay a gold-plated boxing glove, mounted on black velvet, engraved with 5 words in looping script, "Float like a butterfly from the king." Ali blinked hard. His grin faltered. The crowd gasped again, unsure whether to cheer or cry. Elvis simply nodded. "For what you give to people like me." Ali swallowed, lips parting but no words coming out. The bell rang for the next round, but no one heard it. Because for one suspended moment, the greatest fighter in the world stood frozen, holding something no one had ever given him before: gratitude. The arena lights dimmed slightly, but every camera in the building stayed locked on the ring. Flashbulbs flickered like lightning across a sky of smoke and noise. Muhammad Ali still held the gold-plated glove, its surface reflecting the white glare of the spotlights. The engraving shimmered as if the words themselves were breathing. He looked up at Elvis, really looked this time. The usual sparkle in his eyes had softened into something new: confusion, gratitude, and maybe even disbelief. For the first time in years, the greatest didn't know what to say. The crowd shouted his name, expecting a quip, a rhyme, a punchline. But Ali didn't move. He was staring at the glove like it was a mirror. Elvis stood motionless too, just outside the ropes, hands folded in front of him. The moment hung like smoke. Angelo Dundee whispered to a reporter ringside, "He's speechless. That never happens." Then the microphone caught a small laugh, half chuckle, half sigh. Ali leaned toward it. "I've been given belts, trophies, medals, but never this." His voice cracked on the last word. The audience froze. Elvis took a step closer, his boots echoing against the mat. "It's not a trophy," he said. "It's a thank you. You showed me what courage looks like when you're outnumbered." The crowd went silent again. Even the echo of the arena fans stopped spinning. Ali turned the glove toward the cameras. The words gleamed under the light, "Float like a butterfly from the king." Then came the moment no one expected. Ali's smile faded. His eyes glistened. He lowered the glove to his chest, pressing it against his heart. He whispered, just loud enough for the mic to catch it, "Nobody ever thanked me like that." Gasps rippled through the audience. Photographers snapped furiously. In that single instant, the boxer who taunted giants and danced through punches stood still and small and deeply human. Elvis didn't move to reclaim attention. He simply nodded once, his own eyes damp. "You fight with fists," he said, "but you lift people with your soul." Ali laughed softly, wiping his face with his glove. "You trying to make me cry in front of my fans, King?" Elvis smiled. "You already did, champ." The crowd erupted. The sound shook the rafters. Fans stomped the floor, chanting both names now. "Ali! Elvis! Ali! Elvis!" Ali raised the golden glove high, the arena lights catching it from every angle. The shimmer looked almost divine. Backstage, a producer muttered, "We're not watching a boxing match anymore. We're watching history." Angelo Dundee leaned over the ropes. "Champ, you good?" Ali nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, just realizing, maybe strength ain't always loud. Elvis grinned at him, then looked out at the roaring crowd. 2 kings, 2 empires, 1 moment of surrender. And as the lights bled gold across the ring, every person in that coliseum learned the same quiet truth. Sometimes, admiration can hit harder than a punch. The cheering had turned into thunder. The camera flashes became strobe lights bouncing off gold and sweat. Yet in the center of all that noise, 2 men stood in a pocket of silence. Muhammad Ali lowered the golden glove, breathing slow. His heartbeat felt louder than the crowd. He glanced at Elvis, still standing beside the ropes, head bowed slightly, as if he'd just prayed instead of performed. For once, the boxer who talked in poetry couldn't find words. He lifted the mic, exhaled, then laughed through the tremor in his voice. "Man, you're trying to make a fighter cry." Elvis smiled softly. "Nothing wrong with tears, champ. Means you still feel the punches." That line landed harder than a hook. Ali's face broke. The grin collapsed into something raw, honest, unguarded. His lip quivered. A single tear slipped down his cheek, carving a trail through sweat and pride. The audience gasped. It wasn't a roar this time. It was a wave of disbelief. The loudest man alive was crying in public. Short sentences cut through the stillness. He breathes. He sees. He breaks. Elvis stepped forward. The velvet box still lay open on the mat. The engraved glove gleamed between them, gold on red. He climbed the bottom rope and reached out. "Come here, brother." Ali moved closer, dropping the microphone. The sound thudded across the speakers, echoing through the hall. Then it happened, the hug. Elvis wrapped his arms around Ali, the champion's gloves pressing against the king's jeweled shoulders. For 5 full seconds, time didn't move. 15,000 people fell silent. Even the arena lights seemed to dim. You could hear cameras clicking from the back rows. Mechanical applause for something words could never capture. Ali whispered something into Elvis's ear. The mic didn't catch it, but lip readers swore he said, "You remind me of my mother." Elvis's grip tightened. She must have been an angel. When they finally stepped apart, Ali's tears had soaked the sequins on Elvis's jumpsuit. The flashbulbs fired again, immortalizing compassion on film. In that instant, every barrier, race, fame, rivalry vanished. There were no titles, no entourages, no ringside gossip. Just 2 men who understood what it cost to carry the world's expectations on their shoulders. A reporter near the stage whispered, "This ain't sports or show business anymore. It's soul." Ali turned to the crowd, eyes shining. "The king just gave me more than a gift. He gave me himself." The audience erupted once more, but it wasn't the usual roar. It was gratitude, loud, chaotic, but strangely sacred. Elvis raised his hand toward the sky, as if dedicating the moment to something larger than either of them. Then he looked at Ali and said, "You fight in the ring. I fight in the heart. Tonight we both won." The crowd lost control. The noise rolled like thunder until it became music. And somewhere in the middle of that sound, humility knocked out pride. Backstage, the air felt thick, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The echo of the crowd still thundered through the corridors of the Louisville Coliseum. Reporters shouted questions that bounced off concrete and died before reaching the door. Inside the locker room, Muhammad Ali sat quietly, the golden glove beside him on a wooden bench. His robe lay open, chest still glistening from the ring lights. For the first time that night, he looked tired but not defeated. Across the hall, Elvis Presley leaned against a mirror, still wearing his gold-fringed jumpsuit. His manager, Angelo Dundee, hovered nearby, unsure whether to speak. Elvis smiled faintly and said, "You ever seen a crowd cry like that at a fight?" Angelo shook his head. "Never seen the champ cry either." Elvis laughed softly, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded napkin. On it, in his looping handwriting, were 5 words he had written earlier that evening. "Real strength is gentle." He looked down at the note. Guess he proved it. Moments later, a quiet knock on the door. It opened slowly, and there stood Ali, no cameras, no entourage, just him. Elvis straightened. "You all right, champ?" Ali nodded. "Better than I expected." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The 2 men stood face to face again, away from the lights, away from the noise. Ali picked up the red velvet box from the table. "You didn't just give me gold," he said softly. "You gave me a reminder. Been years since somebody looked at me and saw more than a fighter." Elvis replied, "You reminded me why I sing. The world cheers for noise, but they remember honesty." Angelo watched quietly, pretending to be busy with a towel. Ali set the glove back down and smiled. "You ever need a sparring partner who can't dance but can talk? You call me." Elvis chuckled. "I'll hold you to that." They shook hands, the kind of handshake that feels less like greeting and more like a vow. Ali whispered, "You gave me peace tonight," Elvis answered. "And you gave me purpose." Outside, the muffled chant of fans still echoed, "Ali, Elvis, Ali, Elvis." Ali turned toward the hallway lights. "We made history in there," he said. Elvis nodded. "Nah, brother. We made grace." As the door closed, the red velvet box stayed behind for a moment on the table, its golden reflection glowing against the wall like a quiet flame. No one realized it yet, but that flame would travel the world. By sunrise, the story had already escaped the walls of the Louisville Coliseum. Photographers rushed their film to darkrooms. Headlines were rewritten. Editors shouted for front-page space. By breakfast, every newspaper from New York to Memphis carried the same image. Muhammad Ali, tears glinting under the ring lights, holding a golden glove. The caption read simply, "The King and the Champ." What happened next spread faster than any official broadcast. Radio stations replayed snippets of crowd audio, people calling in to describe what they saw. "He wasn't just crying," one woman said. "He was thankful." A teacher in Chicago told her class that morning, "Remember this day. You just saw humility knock out ego." The photo reached Graceland within hours. Elvis sat at his kitchen table, coffee untouched, staring at the newspaper. "They got it right this time," he said quietly. "No gimmicks, just truth." Across the ocean, British tabloids ran the story too. One headline read, "Ali meets his match, in kindness." Within a week, posters appeared in gyms across America. Fighters taped the photo to their lockers. Some called it superstition. Others called it motivation. Angelo Dundee later recalled, "You could see it in the younger fighters. That picture became their reminder that even heroes can bow without breaking." 25 years later, in 1999, a forgotten reel surfaced during a TV documentary about Elvis's life. It showed grainy footage, Elvis stepping into the ring, handing over the box, and Ali lifting the glove. The crowd's roar washed over the tape like thunder. When it aired, phones lit up across the country. Fans called it the purest thing Elvis ever did. Others said it was the moment Ali stopped being a myth and became a man again. Clips spread online decades later. People replayed it, slowed it down, searching for the exact second Ali's expression changed, from laughter to tears. Every replay hit millions of views. And then came Ali's later interview, the one fans still quote. Sitting in a soft armchair, older but proud, he smiled at the memory. "Elvis made me feel human," he said, "and that meant more than any belt." Today, a small bronze plaque rests near the Coliseum's north entrance. It reads, January 21st, 1974. When two kings met, the world remembered what grace looked like. Tourists stop, take photos, and read the engraving aloud. But the ones who know the story don't just look. They stand quietly, as if listening for the echo of applause that once shook those walls. Because even now, 50 years later, that gift still travels. Years later, Muhammad Ali kept that golden glove in his home gym in Berrien Springs, Michigan. It sat in a glass case beside his Olympic medal and first heavyweight belt. But when reporters asked which meant the most, he always pointed to the glove. Because, he'd say, tapping the glass, "This one came from love, not victory." That line became legend. Trainers quoted it to young fighters who confused aggression with greatness. In the years after Elvis's passing in 1977, Ali often spoke about him with quiet pride. "The man could fill a stadium, but that night, he filled a heart," he told a journalist once. "He didn't come to be seen. He came to see me." Those words changed how fans remembered the story. It wasn't just about fame. It was about what happens when power meets humility and chooses kindness instead of conquest. Inside Graceland's museum today, there's a small photo from that night. Ali and Elvis locked in that impossible embrace, the glove gleaming between them. Beneath it, a caption reads, "Strength isn't just what you throw, it's what you give away." And maybe that's the lesson they both left behind. Elvis had spent years fighting his own invisible matches, against exhaustion, expectation, the weight of being the king. Ali, meanwhile, was the symbol of defiance, a man who stood up to the world and refused to bow. Yet for one night in 1974, both put down their defenses. They showed that the truest power doesn't roar, it whispers. Short sentences land like punches. Respect, grace, silence. A Louisville fan named Maria Lyle, who had been in the 10th row that night, later wrote in her diary, "I saw strength cry and weakness smile. Maybe they were never opposites after all." Her diary entry ended up in a local museum. Visitors still stop to read her line out loud. Every story since has carried that same echo: boxers, singers, soldiers, everyday people. Because everyone fights something, and sometimes the bravest act is lowering your guard. If you were standing in that crowd, what would you have done? Would you have cheered the punch? Or the pause that followed? That's the beauty of it. One moment between two men became a mirror for the rest of us. It reminded the world that trophies gather dust, but gestures become eternal. When Ali later told a reporter, "Elvis hit me harder than anyone ever did," the journalist laughed. But he wasn't joking, because what Elvis threw that night wasn't a punch, it was peace. Time turned the moment into a legend, but legends are only powerful when they still teach. 50 years later, people still whisper about that night. The velvet box, the tears, the silence that felt holier than any anthem. Clips resurface every few months online. Millions of views. A new generation watching in awe as the king and the champ share a stage built for neither of them. Comments flood in. That's what respect looks like. Real strength doesn't need noise. And they're right, because what Elvis and Muhammad Ali shared wasn't entertainment. It was a reminder that greatness isn't measured in titles, but in tenderness. At the Louisville Coliseum, the plaque still shines. Tourists stop to snap pictures, but some pause longer, reading the engraving twice. It says, January 21st, 1974, when two kings met. A small red rose usually sits at its base. No one knows who leaves it. Some say it's a fan. Others swear it's one of Ali's old trainees. Inside the Arena Museum, a looping video plays grainy black and white footage. Elvis stepping forward, the velvet box, Ali's trembling smile. The crowd gasps every time the lid opens, even though everyone already knows what's inside. That's the strange power of sincerity. It surprises us forever. When Ali passed in 2016, that clip was played again during his memorial in Louisville. As the footage rolled, the audience stood. For 60 silent seconds, 15,000 people, just like that night, rose to their feet once more. Elvis's cousin Billy Smith later said, "If Elvis had been alive, he would have stood right there with them." What started as a single act of gratitude had become a ripple of empathy stretching across decades. Fighters, artists, fans. Everyone could see themselves somewhere between the ropes of that ring. Short, sharp lines land like memory. A glove, a tear, a touch of gold. Each one proof that compassion can outshine crowns. Think about it. What gift could you give that money can't buy? What could you place in someone's hands that reminds them they matter? That's why the story endures, because it isn't about two men anymore. It's about the courage to thank, the humility to receive, and the wisdom to know which one you're meant to be. Decades from now, when someone stumbles on that old photograph, the king bowing his head, the champ holding back tears, they'll feel it too. That pulse of recognition, that quiet thunder in the heart. Because kindness doesn't age. It travels. Elvis once told a reporter months after the event, "I gave him a glove, but he gave me grace." And that's the truth that still knocks the world off its feet. The strongest moment of the 20th century wasn't a punch or a note. It was a gift, a velvet box, a golden glove, and the silence that followed, still echoing half a century later. If you listen closely, you can still hear it, the hum of that Louisville night. The crowd gone quiet, two legends breathing the same air. A golden glove catching the light like a sunrise. 50 years have passed, but the meaning hasn't aged. Strength isn't the roar of a punch or the glare of a spotlight. It's the quiet moment when power chooses kindness. Every generation needs its own version of that glove. A gesture that says, "I see you. I respect you." Maybe yours isn't gold or velvet. Maybe it's a word, a hand, a forgiveness long overdue. Think of the person who carried you through their own fight. What would it mean if you told them what they gave you? Because legends don't live forever, but gratitude does. So if this story made you feel something, don't scroll away. Share it with someone who still believes gentleness is weakness. Tag a fighter in your life, the one who battles quietly and never asks for applause. Let this story remind the world. The greatest victories don't happen in rings or arenas. They happen in hearts brave enough to thank another.